Hello.
Good morning.
Morning. We'll wait for a few more people to start. It's Jesse. Hello, Jesse. All right. Let's get started, I guess. So, how are people this week?
I can't seem to hear you properly.
I can hear you. I can hear both of you.
Okay, can you hear me? Jesse, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay.
I think it's me.
Oh. I don't know.
I think it's me.
Can you hear Amanda? Okay. Well, he's going to come in and come back. Yeah. Do the AV shuffle. There we go.
Can you hear us now?
I guess not. All right.
I don't think this is working for me for whatever reason. Very confused.
Can you hear us now?
All right, I'll just use a different device altogether. I'm sorry.
For whatever reason, Jitsi acts up for me when I use Safari, but it's fine when I use Chrome.
Huh. Yeah. Well, yeah, it does run from the browser. It has different specs. So I don't know. I've not had a problem. I use Chrome or Edge, and then I don't think I've used Safari. But
Hi. Sorry, I missed everything before. But
oh, it's okay. Yeah. No, we're just trying to get called the AV shuffle, where you have trying to get everything organized. So yeah, let's get started. So do we have updates or things you wanted to mention before we begin?
I have a few things, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to say anything. You guys can go first if you want to say anything.
Cognition Futures is great. Yeah, it was actually really good. I really am glad that we have spent so much time on the gesture of awareness, even though we read that entire book.
Yeah.
It's been really good to get back to it and to think about it after having ventured off and read other things. I thank you, Jesse, for typing up those notes in the Notion page. Just standalone, reflection on that discussion. I added a little bit to it, and I think that could be that's a note page to hold on to, because I think it's connected to some questions that could become more full-fledged papers.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk a bit more about that later. Not in depth, but just to kind of show it, because I think that's I agree with everything you said, and I think that's it feels kind of like the first. It feels like the most refined artifact we actually have right now from the whole project in some ways, because it's so synthetic of some things. I mean, maybe outside of this stuff, you've written quite a lot on the embodied phenomenology stuff, so I don't mean to. I think that maybe supersedes it in some ways, but like it's a nice. I think even more than the post Fuchs review that I was trying to do, like that fully fleshed out document will be a real artifact for the project. I'm excited about that too.
Mm-hmm. And I like that it's explicitly connecting the two books, Fuchs and Varela.
Yeah, I kind of imagined using some of the question and project things in there ultimately, but I kind of just did a quick immediately after the meeting, particularly after that meeting. I wanted to just write some stuff down, and I want to go back and go to like the first part of the basically part one, or the previous week's meeting. I didn't really extract a lot from that, so there's a lot to be put into it, but it's good. Morgan.
Yeah, so I mean, I can go. Yeah, I think things have been going great this week. We did the cognition futures and the GSOC meeting. The GSOC meeting went pretty well. We had another week in the community period, so that's. I think the two students are kind of going through a lot of the materials, and it's nice to see them kind of pick up things that maybe pique their interest, or are something we wouldn't think to like give them like as a specific thing. The first week I went through all the resources that we have, and then last week or yesterday, Vrushali especially was doing. So she was talking about some of the things that we had in there, like some of the materials, and so. I want to stress again that the way we think about the organization is that we have these banners, and then these sort of instances of the banners. It's either some sort of project or a specific instance, like a piece of open source software or something. And so I stress to them that they can take ownership of that if they wish. So I mean, this is something that is true to anyone in the group, but it came up to me yesterday as I was talking to them, and I think Jesse made that point that that's something that's special about the lab. So I just wanted to bring that up to a more general audience. So yeah, I think they're getting ready for GSOC, the coding period, which begins at the end of the month. I think the cognition future stuff is going great. We have a lot of different potential papers to write or things to keep working on. So that should be good. And then we have other things going on that we've kind of fallen by the wayside, but maybe not, because as the opportunity arises, we can pull those things out and keep working on them. So yeah. So I think, we're going into summer, and that means that Neuromatch is going to be starting in a couple weeks. I'll probably do some things in the meeting for that, to talk about the lay of the land, at least this year. Like last year we went through, I think it was the computational neuroscience course, and kind of pick things out from there. We might go through their deep learning course this year. I don't really know what they're going to offer, but well, why don't we think about that? And if you have specific suggestions about how you want to approach that, let me know, because I think it's useful to go over in the meetings.
Can you say how you want to approach that again? What was it about?
If you have ideas about how we might approach it. So like last year, I did like a recap in the meetings, maybe about 40 minutes of the week's curriculum, and then maybe some of the things associated with that, like little deep dives, although they weren't really that deep. But we talked about a slow pod at one time, and we never did it. Part of that is because it's just a lot of work to do, to execute, and part of that is because it's kind of a hard thing to say what you want out of it. I mean, I guess if you're unpacking the materials yourself, you can do anything you want with you can take anything away you want.
I also think, and I think those are the main things, but I also say having people who have demonstrated interest in wanting to do that has been a factor too.
Right.
Like I could do it. Like it probably could be. I could have, if I really wanted to. I probably could have dragged Bradley and other people into it. But I think it will also come down to like people who really want to get in depth in that material. And I don't know. Like I don't know. I guess one of my immediate questions about it. We can talk more about it later too if you want. But one of my immediate questions is like, do we want to advertise for that and make something of it? Like, there's an old, I think it's like Joe Pesci in some old movie. Like, you want to make something of it,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like, not in a threatening way necessarily here, but more like we could have like this whole spectrum of, hey, let's talk about Neuromatch once for like 5 minutes versus let's spend 2 months in a slow pod about it. And I have no real sense of, I mean, I do, I guess, but it's such a wide ranging thing that I think we will have to make some choices about it or eventually let it, seep into things and, slip past it. It could be it could be any of those things. So maybe we'll float some advertisements or something. Not really sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could say we'll be talking about it, but last year I kind of felt like it was somewhat ad hoc in the sense that I don't know what people really want to know from or really want to go over from the materials, and some of that is because it's just like a fire hose, like you learn everything all at once and then you have to unpack it later, which is maybe the problem for some people. Like, so Jesse took Neuromatch, the computational neuroscience. So I know it was very formative for you, but like, how much do you recall from that? What percentage of the material do you think that you've internalized? Just a rough estimate.
Yeah, and I think I would say it's fairly low, but I think that's also because most of the work that I've done, like I don't do in my day-to-day life a lot of computational neuroscience stuff. I think it would actually be if I was doing a lot of neuroimaging or a lot of neuro handling a lot of neuro data, I think it would actually be higher. But like I think I'm low for different reasons. Like I remember some stuff. I remember like it is quite valuable because I can think, oh, I remember this in Neuromatch, and I could kind of go back to the notes and find stuff. It did leave quite a lot of like breadcrumbs to go back and trace, which I think is actually quite useful. But I mean, for me personally, I don't think it's a high. It's definitely like I don't know, not much above 60%, maybe 50% that I like really feel tenable about.
Yeah.
But I think I'm not exactly its target audience in that case, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, it's going to be different for different people. Like if that's your core area versus not, you're not going to know. Like you're not going to retain as much or use it in your daily life, so you don't have this sense of mastery, as you say, like to talk about. But yeah, I mean that might shape how we do things. I didn't really think about that explicitly, but
I'm partially curious also about like I'm partially curious also about like when I go through my general updates, I'll mention some summer questions I have for myself. So I'll say more about that later. But yeah, I think there's something to like. I think there could be some great things to do with Neuromatch again. But I'm not really sure what to do yet. So
yeah.
I'll have more discussion about that later. Or like not later today, but I don't know, in the near future maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. just keep in the back of your mind. We're not there yet, but we'll be ramping up soon. So, hello, Morgan. How are you? Do you want to give an update or?
Yeah, good. Thank you. No updates though. Really.
All right. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining the meeting. And then, so Jesse, if you want to give your update.
Yeah, I'm going to do a very brief overview of some topics, I think, and then I'm going to have to be away for actually, yeah, I'm gonna step away right. Can I come back in 3 to 5 minutes? Just
Okay.
have to handle something urgently right now.
All right. I'll see you in a little bit here. All right.
Sorry.
So Jesse's gonna step away from computer for a while. I'll just go into what I wanted to get into. Jesse put a Notion doc in the chat. So this is, well, he'll talk about some of these things. But I have another feature, like XR feature, another virtual reality feature. This one is about augmented reality and talking about portals, something called portals. So I'm going to share my screen. We'll go over that. So what are portals? So actually, this is an example of a portal. So this is a tweet from someone who talked about, had an idea how to do portals in AR last night, and it actually kind of worked. So you can see that there's like the virtual world around. You have this virtual box, virtual background, and then there's this what looks like a little hole with a light aura around it, and then there's you can see this is a very real bedroom where he's putting his hand through and touching things in the real world. So, you have the virtual world around, you have this little hole, and then there's the real world. And the way they do that with headsets is that they have a pass-through camera that you can turn on. And so you can have this virtual world, it's rendered in the headset, and then you have this information coming from the real world in front of you, and you can take images of that and put it into these spaces. So that's what a portal is. And this is, I think, the movie here where it goes around the room as these different, actually a virtual model of the room, and then the portal through different parts of that. So throwing boxes through the portal, virtual boxes, and it's kind of going between portals. So it's kind of like, something you might see in a fantasy movie or a science fiction movie, and you can replicate that in a headset. So you're kind of mixing. They call it mixed reality, where you're mixing the real world and the virtual world. And so that's the sort of effect you want. So this is kind of useful for a number of things. This is useful for maybe integrating a task in the workplace where you have things that are basically a virtual world, but you need to have some input from the real world, and you need to bring it together seamlessly, so that you might have a portal where you can see something on the side of your visual field, but in the center you have some task related thing, or even something as simple as what we saw in that last example where you're kind of moving things around and you want to push things through a portal, maybe from one side of the view and bring it back around to the other side. And there are a lot of ways you can design these. You can use this in a headset, which is, of course, you've seen the headsets that people use, but you can also do this in what they call web AR or web XR. And so web XR is just implementing this on a phone or a mobile device. And so this is an article on web AR portals, bringing magical worlds to your phone. So in order to create a strong understanding of augmented reality portals, there's a need to first explain augmented reality and the world of endless possibilities that can be gleaned from it. AR is a technology that superimposes a computer-generated model on a user's view of the world. As we saw, this can be done either through an AR headset or through mobile AR. And so a couple of examples of how people have done this in a sort of a popular way is Pokemon Go, of course, where you have things, you walk through the park and you have these things that pop up and you can, capture treasure or whatever in the real world. So there are different ways you can mix this. You can have these portals that kind of open up to the real world. You can have objects that kind of pop up from in the real world. You can wear like a pair of glasses or have your headset open, the pass-through camera is open. You can watch things in the real world and then have virtual objects pop up, or some combination of the two. So Pokemon Go is an example of adding fun creatures into the world. You can also display furniture in your room. IKEA Place has an example here where they have, they can demo furniture in a room. They can put, virtual pieces of furniture in a real room, or real pieces of furniture in a virtual room. And so this can be done both ways to give people a sense of what it would look like in their own place. You can try out makeup. Sephora has an AR app. And then there are other examples that they don't mention here. This is their example of a portal where you have a virtual doorway. You walk through and you enter another dimension. In this case, it's just serving as a portal between the real and virtual world. So this is from the TV show Stargate. So it's kind of a very fanciful example of this, but it's basically a similar concept. And so, this allows you to sort of do things with this sort of immersion. You have the virtual world where you're immersed, but you also have access to the real world that is, can be leveraged in different ways. You have to have a good way of designing it, or else it kind of breaks the illusion of your immersive environment. And so in AR portals, the exterior side of the portal has a material property that must be transparent while blocking the rendering of models behind it. So this is an example. I don't know if I can zoom in on this. This is an example kind of on a phone of a portal in action. You have this virtual world around it. You walk through and you see the real world, and you have this material nature of the exterior side of the portal. And so, you want to be able to pass through seamlessly. You don't want it just to be like this patch. So you want to be, you want to present it so that you're in a virtual world and there's a doorway and you walk through the doorway and enter this new world. You don't want to have it like just be this patch where, okay, that's the real world. I see it. So what? Basically, you want to create a visual frame to it so that you can see, so that it's sort of meshes with the virtual world that you're in. So there are different ways to implement this. You can use AR Core, AR Kit, Eighth Wall, or some other competing platform. The basic premise is always the idea that you start with a 3D model or a cube map, and then build portals into that map or model, and then add in as you need to. So there's a vocabulary to this. There's an active AR portal where the user must physically walk through the portal. There's a passive AR portal where the portal encloses around the user automatically. So you can have either an active AR, an active portal where you actually push things through or walk through it. There's a passive portal where you just simply stay there and the portal envelops you. So you can pass through from the virtual to the real world. You have these AR windows where the user can only look inside but not physically enter. So the example of where you had this world here. Now this world you can pass through and interact with what's on the other side, but maybe you just want to have a window in your virtual world that shows like the world outside. You don't want the user to go through it or interact with it in any way other than to look at it and see. And that's perfectly fine, but this is what they call an AR window. There's something called dimensionality, which is the richness of the three-dimensional content. There's a ground-based AR window, which is where the portal is on the same level as the floor or table surface the user is scanning. The user looks down into the AR window. So it's basically where your AR window is on the ground. So if you want to see something like, maybe if you have a application where you're walking around a room and you want to have access to seeing what's below you, what's at your feet, so you don't trip over something, that would be a good thing to have. And as opposed to like seeing what's in front of you, which, maybe you keep you're in a room where it's pretty much open, but you want to make sure you don't trip over your own feet. So you have a window at the bottom, a ground-based AR window, and then a virtual world above. Then there's an AR portal doorway, which is a doorway where the user transitions from the real world into the digital. So this is where it's sort of an active AR portal, but it's sort of a doorway, the actual act of going through that and going from the real to the virtual, or virtual to the real, or maybe from the real to the virtual world. So web AR portals are used in a number of places, especially in terms of like web apps or mobile apps. It's used in retail quite extensively, where there's a lot of window shopping, where you can have, like I mentioned with the IKEA example, you can try out pieces of furniture and you can put them in some sort of context. You can actually show a variety of scenes with, different products, different things you're trying to sell. You can give like a number of different examples of that in an environment. So if someone comes into an environment, you might have different portals that have different examples in them. So you can do this on site or at home. So doing this on site requires, some of the hardware in in a store or retail establishment. Doing this at home means you have to have the equipment with you, and of course you can shop from home or do whatever. And so in this case, they might use a virtual showroom, and it might be a replica of the physical store that you can shop in, or it might be somewhere, you can sit in your living room and, look at some products through these portals and try out things. Hotels and resorts also use them. So, they might want to sell their view that they have from their hotel rooms, and you can certainly see those in the virtual environment. But also, being able to render things with 360 cameras. So the 360 cameras capture images all around the user, and you can project those into an environment where you have these real scenes that you can explore in a virtual environment, which means you have a number of degrees of freedom to move around that space, and you can look all the way around. And if you have an amazing view to sell, that would be the kind of way you would implement that. So there are a lot of ways to do this. All this technology, the cost of it is dropping, and so there are a lot of ways you can implement this. Another way, of course, is zoos and museums, which are, again, things where, there's this sort of visual experience or something to see. And so you can, put specimens online. You can, put in views of different things in the museum or the zoo that would be of interest to someone maybe from far away, or, it kind of entices people to come on down and see what you have there. So these are different ways that these can be implemented. And some of the ways that the things that they've learned from some of their experiences. So I don't know how many principles there are here. Oh, 15. So, there are a lot of things you have to think about when designing a portal and how to use it. There's minding the gap, which means that you have to sort of know when you're in the portal versus on the edge of the portal. If you go through a doorway, there's an experience to that. You don't want to sort of have a doorway where there's a blank space, or it's hard to move through, or it's hard for the camera to keep the environment stable. There are a lot of technical pieces to put together here and to keep them operating. So if your tracking dies when you go through the portal, it's probably not great. There's also like the design of Way Back Home. So I know that like in Plot Twisters, for example, there's this game board and you're moving around different places. This would actually be something that of interest to them, because there's a, it's not just building these portals, it's moving into the portal, moving, as you saw the example of the box where you pushed it through one portal and it came through the other one on the other side of the view. It's almost like this set of secret doors that you can go through. And so if you go through a portal, make sure you know how to get back home, or that if the portals are connected, how they're connected, and provide a way for the user to know where those are. So you have to provide some sort of map or something, and you have to know kind of, it shouldn't be in your face. Like you shouldn't know that like this is a portal to the other side of the screen. It's just that, you want to know kind of where you're going, and that people don't get lost. You need to let people know that you have how to get into the portal and through it. You have to have like this sort of sense of, going through a portal, whether that be sound effects or some sort of set of animations. If you've ever seen the movie Slider or the TV show Sliders, they have like this cheesy graphical effect of going through a wormhole. It's like going down a tube or something. If you go look it up online, you'll see what I mean. That's their sort of effect for going through to a different dimension. And so that may be very cheesy, but at least it gives people that sense of this is what's happening. You want to help people explore the space. You want to encourage people to explore the space. You want to have a reset button if things go wrong, if the user loses tracking, they don't get stuck in some part of the environment. You want to have things, you want to have multimedia stimuli, so you want to have not only the visual effects, but audio cues as well. The doorway should be very important and enticing. So, maybe a plain portal isn't enough. Maybe you want to have a doorway that you can open. And then there are just a lot of different design principles that you can include in your portal. Just ways to render it, ways to interact with it. So this is the just basically an introduction to portals. This is an article from AR Affected. This is a different article on how to design AR portals with Spark AR Studio. So this is something that there's a specific way that this can be implemented technically. So there's a combination of Spark AR Studio, Blender, some extensions for Blender, using Photoshop for graphic design, a 3D model of a room, and some patches. So this is step one. This is a portal from this landscape into a meeting room. And so you can see that there's this walkway and it goes through a door. You can go through and get into this room. So, this is just kind of bringing that, you have the virtual world that you're sort of immersed in, and then you have the real world you're in. So if you say you're in a meeting and you want to walk out into the hallway and you want to walk into this virtual world, you can do that, but you can find your way back to your office, and you don't have to take the headset off. You can just kind of do both at the same time, basically. And so that's what they're doing here. You want to have a portal that you can, kind of design so that it looks somewhat natural. Then you want to have, like, this is an example of 360 video where you can capture video. You stand in a sort of a centralized location, your camera takes video, it acquires it from all around, it just kind of rotates and takes pictures. And then those pictures are stitched together in this sort of arena, as you see here. And so then this room is basically a big circle of images around it. And so you can navigate this space by turning around and looking at it. And so one thing you can do is put portals in the side of this 360 view so that you can walk through, and it enhances the experience, because otherwise you're just kind of like walking around in this center area. With portals, you can walk through and do other things. And so this is just like the 3D model of all of this. So, this isn't appealing, it's just the 3D model. Then you can poke a portal into that 3D model of that 360 arena. Then you put an occluder, which means you give it some depth cues. And then, you put in a door, you measure, you figure out, how big the portal should be with respect to the environment. And then you put a wooden door in, and now I can knock on the door, or I can twist the knob of the door, open it up, and go through my portal. And so that's how you basically design a portal. And then finally, this is be transported into new virtual worlds with AR portals. This is an article from 2019 where they kind of show, this is sort of an introduction to portals. So this kind of gives some statistics that are probably out of date. But basically, it's estimated that nearly 30% of smartphone users use AR apps at least once a week. And that's before we include Pokemon Go. So it's actually something people are using quite a bit. So there are a lot of different ways you can design this. And this is just kind of an introduction. So I'll post this in the Slack. So this is an example of someone stepping through a portal. This is, there's just different ways to do this. So that's all I had to feature on that. So that's the AR portals, and hopefully, Vrushali's not here right now, but that's something that she might be interested in, because she's doing a host of different things. She's designing a host of different assets for the VR project.
Nice.
I think that maybe for the first time I had the thought of like, wow, that would actually be an amazing use of VR, specifically at zoos. Like imagine like you could have an AR setup or VR setup where there would normally be like, cages or fields with the animals. You'd have like those live cams of like eagle's nest in the wild, but like things from the wild, so like animals actually in their natural environments. And you could bring all of those feeds into one place that you could physically move through.
Yeah, it would be. I'm really kind of interested. I would be interested to see what people could do with that, because it's kind of like there are a lot of possibilities. Bringing all this information from different places. So, normally a zoo, you have exhibits, and they try to make the exhibits in the last, like, say, 50 years. Zoos have really transformed the way they do exhibits. Mm-hmm. From just like cages to, like experiences. So it would stand to reason you could bring in webcam content and things like that as well.
That was for a zoo, right?
Yeah,
that was just one of the things that the article mentioned offhand, but then that got me thinking, and like that would actually be, I think, an excellent use of VR, where the virtual version could be much better than the real version. Like, you wouldn't get to be that close to the animals, but you often can't get that close to the animals in the zoos. And in a sense, you'd be closer to them because they'd be in their natural habitat, and you'd get all the YouTube live streams into one place.
I have someone, of course, who works in a zoo and has mentioned something adjacent to that, but not quite that directly. So I'm actually curious how that would work for them, because they're really big on trying to their big things like making some of the stuff more accessible to people, and especially for people who are maybe less able-bodied or other things that might be a big deal too. So that's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
which is a hint towards something else I'll talk about later today, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah, Jesse, I'm interested that, with respect to plot twisters, what your thoughts are on portals.
Portals, as in, I missed some of the presentation, but I saw the original part where you had the VR demo about things going through the portal specifically.
Yeah.
Or did you mean like more than that? Too?
Well, I mean, I kind of mentioned that there, with plot twisters, you're doing these game boards, and you have the game board, and you're moving around. You do have things that are kind of like portals where you move around the game board. You can like move through a portal or something. So, I mean, do you think that would be something that would be of use to plot twisters? Like instead of having the static game board, having something like that where you could, almost like an AR or XR app, mixed reality app, where you kind of go into that game world.
Yes, in the sense of, so one of the things with plot twisters about that, and again, forgive me because I missed some of what you had to say, but I'm back here fully now, is so for a little bit about plot twister stuff, I should that is still ongoing, but we're kind of in a little summer downtime because we've all had to travel, and I think Jenny's in Oxford right now, and also like organizing a conference, a small conference at Oxford that I applied. Oh, I don't think I mentioned that. I should put that on my list of things to talk about. Like beyond the hyper digital or something it was called. More about that later now that I remember it. But to your question, it's particularly interesting to think about as a means of doing some stuff. Number one, I think like the base game probably won't be like a direct. I think it's going to be a first person like web based game, but there's a lot of and more ideal versions or more like expansions of it definitely are potentially VR or AR related in that sense. And an interesting aspect of it, either as a symbolically in the game or perhaps in an actual immersive experience in a more AR or XR setting, is that the relationship between some of the external environments and the relationship of the user as they are going through, let's say, the plot twister's journey, as well as things like the weather or some of the external context, will be one of one of the most interesting things we're working on is sort of how do we have these like in the algorithm design part of things right now. And obviously there's only so much I can say freely at the moment, but in designing how, let's say I guess I can say we're playing with some really interesting ways to relate both the state of the I guess character, like the user, and the state of the world that they're in. And a key thing for that is sort of the nature of transporting between different parts of the game world. And I think part of it'd be really interesting I may essentially show that to the plot twisters crew, because it's not really what we're focusing on right now, but it lends to some really interesting discussions and potential implementations for what we're trying to do there. Because going to a different place or having one, I guess it raises a specific question of, how in like video games certain video games you can automatically like fast travel to different parts of the world. Certain video games that's something that you unlock after like you get the airship or you get some vehicle or some teleportation ability, or you're just, gotten enough to skip around. It's like you can now skip to this because you don't have to see this cutscene so many times in some older games too. So I think there's something about all of that that comes down to the fun thing about plot twists is that there's a lot of interesting embodiment takes on transitions that we're working on. So this is a fun piece to consider alongside of all that. So yeah, I'll definitely mention this to the crew.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Amanda, for your comments. And one more thing, Jesse posted in this chat. I posted something in Slack for a projected keyboard screen that has a semi-AR overlay. So, what channel was that in the Slack?
Probably the virtual reality one.
All right, let me take a look. We'll take a look at that, and then you can give your update, which we're still working on. So let's go to the virtual reality.
It's basically just a keypad and then glasses that you wear.
Yeah.
And, it kind of just projects it out there. And it's funny because I feel like, okay, this is exactly what I'm doing with like my home screen is a big screen in front of me. It looks just like that with an actual hardware, so
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, in the Discord or VR Discord, I have a channel called Working, and so there's this whole area, where people have tried to set up a virtual office in VR and AR. So in VR, you can do virtual office space. There's like Horizon Worlds, and there's an app called Immersed, and both of which allow you to set up screens. You basically capture your screen from your laptop and you bring it into the virtual world, and then that allows you to put it on a number of screens that you can put in the virtual world. So you have your keyboard will show up, if you have the right keyboard, as a virtual object that you can touch with your hands. The technology is pretty good for rendering that, so it works. It's not perfect, but and then you have the screens in front of you, so you can have multiple screens. I'm not a big fan of multiple monitors myself, so that helps me because I can have that experience without actually having the hardware. And so you can just, work and move things around to different screens like you would with a multiple monitor setup, but you do that all virtually. And, that's nice for doing, work, and the weight of the headset notwithstanding, you can get to enjoy it. So I actually feature some of that in one of the videos on our channel, but there are other YouTube videos where they kind of explore a lot of different ways of doing this. There are a lot of meeting spaces, for example, where you can, project things on a wall with collaborators sitting around a table, and that's all like a sort of a sub area of VR. This is actually XR, where you're actually in a room. You have glasses on, which are more lightweight than the VR headset, and you're using a real keyboard. So everything here is real except for the screens. So you're projecting the screens out. And this is very much like, it's almost like an inverse version of like Immersed or Horizon Worlds, where you have the screens but not the rest of the environment. You're projecting your laptop onto a screen, but you're not, everything else is real. So, it's kind of right in front of you. You have to wear the glasses, of course, to get the effect, but basically you're able to do this multiple monitor setup without the tech, without the hardware. Hello, Vrushali. Welcome. So yeah, that's what I want. Thanks for posting that, Jesse. I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. So, Vrushali, do you have an update, or would you like to say something this week? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, you can type it in the chat if you want. So Jesse, I guess it's time for your update.
Okay. I think you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So there's a few things. I guess I'll kind of combine my intro update and then I'll just go into I'll go into other things more in depth as they come up. So I'm just pulling up a few things. Yeah, okay. So, all right. This will hopefully work how I want it to. Ooh, remind me to talk about disability later and neurodivergence. Because I posted some stuff in like the Methods Project, and I don't think I put that on my list yet.
Okay.
All right, I'll just put this quickly. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm preparing to share my screen here.
Okay.
So 3 more seconds.
Okay.
I'm gonna get to it now. Come back in with this. Okay. Yes.
There we go.
I think is it just muted? Yeah, for whatever reason. Okay. Oops.
Yeah.
I think I can work normally now.
Okay.
Can you say something? Okay, great, awesome. Okay, there's a strange sort of muting of a specific tab that I didn't realize before. All right, so I always loved my favorite math teacher. Well, one of my favorite professors. He would always do this sort of, we talked about the gesture of awareness, and like, okay, like he the gesture of awareness starts with this sort of suspension of, I don't know, judgment or suspension of the incessant thought stuff. And it's almost like he would declare this thing and he would say, and now let us perform the calculus. And it was funny and theatrical, but also like, now that we know gesture of awareness, it's like, okay, we're suspending our normal activity to go into calculus mode. Or like, but it was about like setting everything up to get to the point where you're actually doing calculus in the equation. And I'm not really a big math person anyway, but it just stayed with me. And now I feel like, okay, let us perform the semi-relational database and the no coding apparatus that is the Notion space, the Notion workspace. That's how I feel. So maybe that'll be my weird gimmick entrance into this. Let's see. All right, the screen has been shared. Let's go through this stuff. I guess I'll put this over. It's not letting me. Okay. So, things I wanted to talk about today are, I had another neurofutures thing. Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine.
An interesting event that I attended, I forgot about, and one of my friends, Dan Ellison, who we both sort of are these transplants from the Albany area in New York who made it to Boston. And Dan thankfully reminded me, hey, Jess, you going to this this event? And I was kind of, I'm not going to, sound like a goody two-shoes here, but I was pretty dedicated to like, well, my Friday night, I'm going to just do a lot of writing because I need to write a lot of stuff and sit down and do it. And then Dan was like, oh, hey, there's an event. You go into that. And I happened to be able to, do it. I'm very happy that I went. And I'll tell you why. That's my teaser for that. But it's related to the the Fluid Interfaces Lab at MIT. It's related to BCI. And it's related to a number of projects that we've talked about here in the future, and also some things I work with otherwise too, on a health tech or biotechnology side of things. Obviously, we kind of talked about Google Summer of Code already, Creation Futures. I do want to mention, I'm kind of a little open discussion about some of my summer plans. And also, Inez Hippolito's, it's not her, she's not burning it by herself, but it's kind of part of her society that she's doing, which I didn't pull that up yet fully. But yeah, just to kind of talk about this for a minute, the deadline stuff and any old business. We do have to talk about sustainable AI stuff. I'm almost wondering if we should, I don't want to say cancel that, but I mean, we basically have, I think we were just accepted for this one version of things.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we want to go about like presenting on it, if like Brian will be here to talk about his work specifically. So I don't know what you want to do with that. But we have options, and we have about 10 days to sort that out.
All right. So this is for a submission, or like for the actual?
Yeah, we were accepted for this.
Okay.
It was super long time ago, and now the actual event is at the end of the month.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We have the opportunity to present something, but I also know like the submission. I did the submission kind of on behalf of the whole thing to this.
Yeah.
And we were accepted, but we need to kind of make a choice. Like, do we want to basically pass and say, oh, sorry, we're not going to do it, or put together some kind of a presentation, even if Ryan will be here to talk about the work that they were spearheading.
So is this like a virtual thing, or is this like what are the guidelines for the presentation? Did they give you any guidelines? Or as I can put together something for it. I just don't know what the guidelines are and how they want it to be presented.
Let's see. It will be virtual. Like, there's a virtual component to it. I don't know where they put the details about their submissions. It's a little bit vague. It's probably in my emails, and I don't think it would be the hugest lift in the world, but
Sure.
I think it's going to be a.
Yeah, you might want to ask like or do a quick inquiry as to how exactly they want it, like what, like it's usually like 10-minute slides.
Yeah,
or something like that.
I think it's somewhere in the emails, but I'm not going to pull it up right now. It would be a little challenging.
Yeah. When you get to do that, please loop me in on it, so I can probably put something together on it, because I've been doing a lot of the work with the preprint, and that's something we can definitely put together. I think it would be great. But it's in 10 days isn't that much, because we have basically everything we need. It's just we want to make sure we get everything the way they want it or in place. So yeah, let me know, like find out the details of the length of time, the length of the presentation, how they want it presented. Probably be like a pre-recorded thing, but still, so we can get that in. Because I definitely want to do that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I was hoping it would be okay. Yeah, that will be a thing to do. I'll message you in Slack about that later today.
Yeah, yeah.
I was kind of been on the back. I was kind of waiting to see if Brian would show up or do some other things,
Oh, yeah.
and who else was on that. But we can just put that together pretty easily.
Well, I think we have the preprint, so that was a lot of that work was done, like kind of getting everything in one place, and because it was like we had the projects last year, and they were kind of siloed in the sense that they weren't descriptive, and there wasn't a
Mhm.
flow between them, and now we have that, so it shouldn't be too
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. We Robot will kind of become as well. Actually, I guess let's do somewhat soon. Yeah. It's when's their final deadline? Okay, so similarly, in about 12 days, 11 days, the We Robot poster is closing. I don't know what other people want to do for this, but I have at least two I want to submit. I have been talking a little bit with Jen about the DEI project and figuring out where we want to go with that. But there's also some possibility for dovetailing into some of the XR Google Summer of Code stuff and kind of continuing between some of the shared cognitive interfaces work. There's also a lot that could be plot twisters related, as we kind of mentioned earlier, and some of the actually that is I did get the go ahead from we are going to make a plot twisters poster. So if people are interested in I don't always explicitly talk about plot twisters here, but anyone's interested in plot twisters, please reach out to me to say, hey Jesse, I'm curious about this. So either the whole group or the We Robot stuff in general. If you want to be part of that, I will be spearheading the submission for this and the poster for this, and I'm really hoping to get in because it's in Boston. It'll be super, super, super cool. But I think so. There'll be one plot versus one. I don't know if you want to do anything for the virtual reality related stuff, and then one I'm going to do something cognition futures related, and I haven't just decided. I don't know if it's going to be the 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 flavor will be basically the methods project. It's just what aspect of it do I want to emphasize in this submission. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but that will happen for sure. So I don't know if people have any questions about We Robot stuff or not at this time. But I was able to go last year in Seattle. It was awesome. Looking forward to it this year in Boston.
Yeah, so I guess the paper that you submitted was not accepted, but their presentations or posters, right?
Yeah, they have a kind of a staggered session where the papers are earlier.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And I honestly, everything about this conference is and the community around it is like super great. It's kind of spirited by like Ryan Callow's on there. He was at Seattle last year, so it's kind of his place to do it. Laurel Reich, we talked about at UCSD, Kate Jarling at MIT. We talked about some of these names before. It's all good stuff. So yeah, it's very cool stuff.
So I mean the content would be the methods, something in the methods paper, and then I guess it would make sense to sort of follow up on the shared interfaces one too. Because last year, you did 2 posters, shared interfaces, and I guess maybe something with methods, but I can't remember. But it might make some sense to follow up on that and kind of provide a next step or some sort of we've made progress on this.
Yeah. So last year, we basically had 2, and they were both accepted. One was our shared virtual lives and robot companions. I think I might have changed the title to something to make it a little more generic to the thing. But it was basically, we talked about, well, actually, I have, I have this thing here. I think this might have been in both, but this is the cognitive environments one that sort of was a very broad thing that I looked at and wasn't really. It was very wide ranging from the technology. The case at the time was some technology disability stuff that I've been doing for other groups and so on. There's a lot to build upon there. And there's also a little interesting stuff that dovetails somewhat from the neurofuture stuff that I'll talk about later. But also this one is the virtual lives one, where we kind of talked about this is sort of education. We talked about the lab. We talked about neuromatch. Talked about DAIR. Talked about some of the bots like Replica. Talked a little bit about plot twisters, and just how it's a very you could say Jenny inspired poster of how digital interfacing is affecting all these things from like education to relationships to mental health to these bots that are supposed to relate to us and touch on those things to game worlds and ed tech basically. So it was kind of a really wide ranging portfolio of stuff going on. I think this year both of these things could be advanced in the sense of saying there'll basically be another plot twisters one that's basically sort of like this but more focused specifically on some of the work we're doing plot twisters that's kind of taking like a deeper, it's basically these same concepts. It's just now there's so much more plot twisters content to talk about. That's basically what the plot twisters one will be. This one would be interesting to combine with. So I guess you're kind of seeing 3 submissions, and we'll see what's actually what actually gets in, because I'm curious to work with like the virtual reality folks on this because there's overlap. But like there's the cognition features methods one specifically. Well, I don't know if it'll be separate from this or not. So think about it a little bit more. But at least these 2 are on my docket, which is like the plot twisters, and then depending on how much we want to say about, like this is kind of speculative virtual reality stuff that we haven't. There isn't really anything we've concretely done. It's just other people's work right now. So I mean, we can do that again, or if there's something we're working on in the summer project, maybe. But the methods stuff I want to do is specific to pointing out our sort of work on methods around the neurophenomenology stuff, if you will. That's a little bit more based on what the project is doing now, because this isn't entirely project related, but it's sort of those are the 3 that I see. And if people have any other ideas, let me know. So.
Yeah, I think that would be nice to bring in the stuff from the VR that we're doing now. And we had talked a little bit yesterday about a roadmap that doesn't really exist yet for what we're doing with VR. But this would be a good example. I think this would be a good way to, like, kind of put together some more flesh on that poster. So, like, the poster kind of goes through some issues, and it's kind of hypothetical, but like, what kinds of things could we put in place, like, in terms of technologies or in terms of like design or in terms of like, use cases. And I think we talked about use cases last year, but that was a minor part of the poster. So it didn't, got this little panel and, but, to think about that a little bit more deeply. And of course, Vrushali will have some ideas as she's working on this. And I know Hussein is also interested in doing stuff with VR. So I don't know what the outcome is, but we'll have to talk about it more.
It would actually be for basically making this year's version of this project, I could basically see, can't say man, I could basically see, I think I might touch it up a bit more, but I could see like one of these panels basically just being about like Google Summer of Code, or like maybe not calling it, this is our Google Summer of Code poster, but basically getting at Vrushali's project. If she wants to go there, I'm not gonna, assign this necessarily, but it'd be a way to sort of present it. So yeah. Sorry.
I mean, it's that. Yeah, we could do like basically putting more flesh on that. Like, that's like, it's a nice. The thing with posters is you want to have like a nice sort of presentation, maybe a hypothetical idea.
Oh, I forgot something about that. Like, I was a little bit too ahead of myself in that, in the sense of, absolutely, like, all we're submitting in less than 2 weeks is, I think it's like a 300-word abstract or something. The poster itself, we don't have to worry about, in the sense that we'll have plenty of things to input from Google Summer of Code, should we want to use that, because the event's in like late September, and we'll have the whole summer to do the Google Summer of Code stuff by then. So there'll be plenty of time to like, put that on the poster directly. But okay, cool. Let's see, it's 11:14. All right, I'm gonna kind of try to get a move on, because there's a bunch of other things to talk about. But yeah, we were, let's put this in like, Frontier Map stuff is ongoing. It's related to a bunch of other things. There was an event that happened today that I'll get to. I'm just gonna, I think, yeah, that's fine. I'm just gonna go here. So I guess I'm officially on the Cogside 2023 meetups list as hosting a meetup in Boston, or at least looking to do that. And I realized that apparently most people just meet up in like a cafe and talk about the event. And I'm like, okay, sure. I was kind of hoping for like, I love whiteboards. So I wanted to have a classroom-ish setting that I'm still trying to finagle, but it is happening. So that's cool in a very nerdy way. I don't know how my little character got in there, but that's fun. But yeah, anybody who's watching this in the Boston area, reach out. We talked a little bit of the Crazy Future stuff. I'll just briefly go over some of like the notes pages and stuff. That's the title, the background of this needs to change. I don't know why it's still that, but it's not actually about the human use of human beings. It's just about recorded at the end of it there. sort of the project to-do list. We made a lot of things on the glossary. We made updating the active questions page, which is going to be sort of the main project management page. Really good discussion this week. I have started doing the reflection document. And then looking forward, we're going to be looking at Evan Thompson's paper and also this other one here from, I think, this book, or no, this one, yeah. And I put together this document very briefly just to show this, the reflections. And I'm kind of, I've been people seeing this, but I'm trying to distill a lot of these bigger concepts that we've been talking about. I see Amanda made a comment here: control, flashlight analogy, meditation, mastery, literacy of correlates, food state informed constraints, relating it a bit to Fuchs and stuff. Gesture awareness as an object of study itself, self-organized criticality. I know that came up. I know Bradley might talk more about that in the future. So we're kind of just a really distilled thing that's it's almost like I don't know what to call it, but it feels quite useful, and I'm happy that it's coming along. It keeps bringing me down there. We did some XR discussion. Inez Hippolito. This is all his deadlines. You know, it's just such a classic like academic thing, but yeah, where is this thing? Here we go. I'm going to submit something to this, and it's quite short notice, but basically this is Inez is sort of trying to put this together. This International Society of Philosophy of Mind, which is, I haven't heard anything about it. I just was looking at their website and said, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, all right, yeah. And I just happened to see, oh, seminar. All right, that's interesting. A little bit unclear how to navigate some of this stuff. And it's a conference. And so there's the first annual web conference for the International Society of Philosophy of Mind and Sciences of the Mind, and it looks very nice. But then all the way at the bottom, there's sort of this here. There's sort of what I'm looking at here. Tomorrow is due a paper or symposia abstract. And that's great because there's no cost or anything. I'm very progressive about that. And it's virtual. But basically what I'm looking to do is I'm kind of thinking of either making a paper one, and I either maybe some like the embodied neurophenomenology stuff, we will want to go there on super short notice, or just I might make a broader one about like our methods project aims. The event itself, I think, is quite later in the year. Yeah, it's the end of November, so we have plenty of time. I'm not really concerned about making the paper will be quite easy for anything. For the condition future stuff, there's going to be plenty of material by then, so I think it's pretty tenable. It's just writing either this a paper or a symposium, and I'm not entirely sure what the symposium means here. I think it means like a discussion, like a discussion session.
Yeah, like a 2-hour session, like where you explore. You could either have a panel, or you could have like a, I don't know if you can just have like presentations. I guess the style is up to you, but you gotta keep people's attention for 2 hours on a single topic. That's the thing. And I guess maximum 5 papers means it's like you're gonna maybe review papers in the symposia. So yeah, I mean, I don't know which one would be better. Like for what, I guess we do it on something like cognition futures, maybe some of the stuff we've been doing in the meetings. So I mean, we could do maybe a symposia. It would be maybe the thing we were talking about with the CogSci, that issue of
The
CogSci.
trends.
Yeah, the trends in CogSci, and then kind of going over that. I don't know if that's what they had in mind. It would definitely be something that we could have people present on and then discuss. In terms of a paper, I'm not really sure what the paper would be on. We could just say like these are some of our explorations. The deadline's pretty close. That's the problem. So it's kind of hard to really think this out very well.
I have something. I have a submission or two for papers to think about. Like I don't have anything ready I can show. I don't have anything I can show about it, but I'm gonna submit something for it. What I think, I'm curious if people have anything they want to do, or particularly for the symposia, like, and one way I think that would, like, I don't have, we certainly don't have any problems filling 2 hours, but it's more like, I could see the CogSci trends, I could see, let's have a deep dive on, like, I don't know, Varela's later work of things about the gesture of awareness or unbecoming aware. Like, I think we could probably have, I think that might be fertile enough, but I don't know if would people want to do that? Like, regardless of putting later, would people want to, do, try to prepare for that? These are, these are the, it's very philosophy oriented, but, open to, all this stuff. Even doing a paper, I'm slightly considering also a submission that would be like, almost plot twisters or society ethics tech related too, but that's not, yeah, that'd be more like a position piece, I suppose. Let me see. So I don't know if I'm not trying to. I will be making at least one of the submissions as a paper, because it's just very tenable for me just to put that together. I don't know if people want to aim for anything with a symposium or not. So
what do you think, Amanda?
I don't know how much help I could be before, tomorrow. But in a longer time frame, like if we get accepted, I'd be willing to help. I wish I had seen this before. Because I think the embodied neurophenomenology project would be a good seed for this kind of paper. But yeah, I don't know how much help I can be before the deadline.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I'm not particularly. I don't see for the embodied embodied neurophenomenology project. Do you see that as being essentially a paper submission to this, or would you think that'd be? I don't know if that'd be symposia related necessarily.
It's not in a state right now where it could be a paper, but that's a goal of mine.
No, and nothing like these aren't going to be finished papers by tomorrow anyway. But more like, I think it'd be very. I think I could write a 500-word abstract about the paper and submit it. It wouldn't probably be ideal or perfect, but we could try to see if it gets in, and if it gets in, I'm sure we could have something by. I think something much more tenably could be happening by November. So, yeah.
Yeah, I totally missed that it said abstracts for papers, as opposed to full papers. Yeah, that actually I could probably do. Because it's definitely relevant.
also, like, I wouldn't be surprised, like, I'm not trying to be, I don't know what to say I'm trying to be here, but I think they don't, I don't think they have a hard deadline, and I think we could probably ask for an extension too, and I think that might be a thing. Also, best meme prize, by the way, which is quite cool. So let's maybe enter that. I have no idea what the deadline for that is at all. But look, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if we want to talk about this now or later, but like I think I'll ask for an extension or float that by Inez or this email here.
Yeah.
Because it was, I honestly, I think I saw this before, and then I didn't see any details, and I'm like, it's all kind of, I'm zoomed in, but it almost looks like it was hard to find information about this. I haven't seen it anywhere other than this website. Like nowhere on social media, nowhere, nothing. So, okay. I mean, I'll connect with you, Amanda, about making this happen in some form. I don't know if I have some major burst of things, I might try to submit a symposia thing. But I'm thinking just maybe 1 or 2 papers I might put together.
I think a paper is more appropriate. Not that we wouldn't be able to fill 2 hours, but in terms of like structuring a discussion for 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. We have done it before at the CogSci event, but I'm not really leaning heavily in the symposia direction.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll pick that up a bit. If you have any time between the next 36 hours to write something up yourself, Amanda, go ahead, put it together. I can look at it or help out too. My goal for today is basically to draft anything about this out like immediately. I've told a lot of people in my life, hey, I'm just gonna like go into sort of academic hermit mode. So that's literally my plan for today. So I'll be working on it. If you want to work on it, let me know. I'll be around, but no pressure to do that.
No, I can work on it for sure.
Yeah, I'll probably say stuff in Slack or like write something in Notion or however you want to do it. We'll put something together. Excuse me. Time is approaching. So that's sort of the big new thing that we talked about. Great. This is the cool thing to talk about. Really briefly, I'm just going to mention because it's a little bit easier to do right now. One thing that's come up this week, and it's a conditioning futures related sense, I'm very interested in the neurodivergent relation to some of the things we're talking about. Avery randomly sent me this thing, and some really fascinating questions come up because how she defined in this video of meditation is like it was sort of questioning meditation as only if you're sitting still and doing things a very specific sort of way, versus going to the same state while having some kind of emotion, going to the same state while doing other things. I think that's quite interesting to consider against what we're looking at in terms of the gesture of awareness, or I'm becoming aware in that process of, what does that look like? And how does that kind of play out across different embodiments or neurotypes, if you will? So between this video, which kind of goes into that a little bit, and also this is a philosophy paper, or a paper. This is what was the journal here? it's someone who is a philosophy person. She's in the Department of Philosophy in Seattle, and there's this sort of a this is a really interesting space for me, and I have quite a surprising amount of friends who fit into this category, and so I do think some of the work I want to do, some of the specific like application areas for a lot of the work I'm looking at in cognition features will be along these lines. I don't have a whole lot to say. I haven't like read this paper fully. I know Amanda left a comment about it. I don't know if you want to say anything about this paper, Amanda, but I'm mostly for me, it's more saying I want to. It's not an immediate direct focus, but it's an indirect focus of things, and I kind of want to. If I would to put it in very simple terms, if I had a lab, if I was 10 years down the road, and Cognition Futures was like the Cognition Futures Lab by Jesse, one of the bullet points of things we're looking at, I kind of want to be disability or neurodivergence related space, of kind of about these two topics. So I'll leave it at that for now. In the interest of time, I imagine you still have papers you wanted to talk about, Bradley.
Yeah, but we can, finish up what you want to do. I mean, I don't want to.
In the interest of time, I'm not going to talk a lot about my summer planning. That's most of my own stuff anyway. But basically, I'm just deciding between if I do neuromatch, if I do some like micromasters work that I've been involved in for a while, if I do some other stuff, balancing Google Summer Recruiter and everything else. But that's not particularly urgent. I definitely want to talk about this. This was quite a lot of fun. So what is this neurolimina stuff that I'm mentioning here? Liminal is a art exhibit, and let me see if I can. Let me just give you a taste, if I can, of something. I don't think this is going to work out very well, but I'll give it a try in a few minutes because I took a few like videos there and stuff. But basically, it's an art exhibit at the Boston Cyber Arts Gallery, which I happen to be fairly close to. And it's basically showing a lot of it was sort of a mix of fictional brain-computer interface devices and some real-life counterparts. And so it was a little quirky, it was a little offbeat, it was a little interesting. But the people who are doing this this is like their main website. Well, this is the NeuroFutures project, which is kind of, I think it's sort of a passion project by Natalia, who is someone at the Media Lab, and you can see her here, and all these folks here who are doing different things. But it's basically 15 years of looking at this experience, but there's for a long time they've been collecting this database of stuff. And you look at the database and you can kind of see, like, I don't know, there's no like, okay, hologram headset here, I guess. Their database is a little confusing to operate, but yeah, the dolphin headband. They talked a little bit about this there. There's all these different things and different it's like categorizing these fictional things with sort of a reality factor, neuro-optimism, neurofictionality, BCI forecast, like in the movie versus like when it would happen and so on. So it's this sort of it's actually something that I kind of wanted to do in a little more BCI focused sense, but I would love to have like a blog where I like just discuss, stuff on different zeitgeists and how that was portrayed in the media. Oh, there we go. There we go. Nope. Nope. So I'm also a fan. The speaker had a very then yeah, the one with Arnold was better back in the 80s or 90s, yeah. But all this stuff, and we had sort of a wide ranging discussion about this, which was kind of fun. But outside of that, it was quite cool to meet. And this is the same person who also, by the way, ran this event, which I attended in December, which was very, very, very cool. If Vrushali is still around, I would encourage you to check this event out because it's maybe more on the BCI side of things than virtual reality, but there's quite a lot of overlap. But I think all the videos are now up online too. I don't know if it's on this site or somewhere else. But all the videos from the events and the speakers were there. And it basically was looked at implants, fabrications, holograms, dreams, a lot of ways of interfacing with stuff. And let's see here. Oh yeah, it's just on this website now. But a very, very, very cool event. Yeah. Okay. So to go back to the Media Lab, this is I think Patty Mays is the group leader. Natalia is the person who's running the art exhibit and other things like that. And I met her there. I kind of met her earlier, but I re-met her there, and I also met someone new. I don't know if they're on this slide yet, but Sven. No, he's not on the website, but this is him here. Sven is an incoming person he's at the event, and he's brand new to the Media Lab. He just joined. He's been in town for a couple months, but he's a lot of interesting background at these other experiences that here. So it's cool to meet him. So I have a few leads into the Fluid Interfaces Lab, and it's someplace I've been considering applying to a lot in the future. So we'll see. I'm not sure. I know Jenny's also quite interested in the Media Lab for some other stuff, but to be continued on that front. But just for those who don't know, the overview is basically creating a lot of things, a lot of like basically somewhere between biotech and health tech and neurotech and wearables that build upon insights from our brain sciences stuff and mind sciences. So it's quite cool. And also at the event was this guy. I forgot his specific name. It's Harrison. I met Harrison, and actually he was at the Augmenting Brains conference. I kind of saw him, but I didn't really get to talk to him there. And he does a lot of social media for them. But it was cool to meet him and talk to him. We actually had a really nice conversation about some of the stuff in my day job. We talk about the process of getting these through FDA, about what makes a device medical or not, what makes all these different issues with kind of dealing with collecting data and how how do you deal with that, I guess. But it was cool to meet Harrison, and it was a fun time at the event. And I'm really glad that my good friend Dan was like, "Hey, you can go to this event," and I totally forgot about it. So it was fun. It was a fun thing to do and impromptu, and I think it would offer some nice connections for down the road too. So potentially we could in time reach out to the BCI guys, and maybe some folks at the lab too, at the Fluid Interfaces lab. So I just wanted to mention that it was an art exhibit and a quirky art exhibit at a small gallery and directly adjacent to a public transit station, which was quite fun. But a lot of useful fruit from coming to that event potentially. Yeah, so that was yesterday. And what was last on my list? Also, there's apparently a waveform thing. People know designers. There's it's slightly Boston based, I think, but basically it's an open call for people to kind of give stuff for media and sort of spaces, equipment production, curation, mentorship of and the stuff here. It's a little bit outside of what we do, but if anybody knows, has any like, I kind of think about getting some of the designers for this, but people are interested in that. Interesting opportunity that's in the Northeast here. Just wanted to mention that briefly. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. That was great. That comparison of BCIs from different movies, that was fun. Yeah.
This is the database is a little unwieldy to me from the web interface. But they have there's a lot of very cool. The project itself is quite interesting. Like this is basically what it looked like. We did a tour and I went through these things, and Natalia was kind of explaining this here and like what's the reality of this device versus what is it doing and how what's the technology behind this. So it was a fun sort of diplomacy or ambassadorial link between here's an idea. Here's the current state-of-the-art technology. Here's sort of where we are relative to, is there any means for that technology existing and what's going on with it? And so it was quite a fun exploration of that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. And then Vrushali wanted that link to, I think, the neurofutures, or no, the neuroliminal, one of the things that we were talking about. I can't remember.
Probably the augmented brains.
Yeah, augmented brains, that's it. It's looking down at my notes. I'm like, which one? Yeah, that's it. Good. So yeah. AR, okay. Yeah, thank you for that, Jesse. It's very interesting stuff. A lot going on. A lot of things on the schedule. I mean, we have the two things, well, a couple things you mentioned there. So please let me know about the poster information that we need, what we need for that. I think we can put that together pretty quickly. That's the benefit of having all the things worked on in advance. You can always put together a presentation if you need to on short notice. So I think I'll give a presentation. I'll go over some papers. So maybe I'll do the Enactivism one this week, and then next week we'll do the neurorobotics. So, these are papers that we find in the literature that maybe fit together, maybe they don't, but it's nice to go through them and see what the details are, see what's in the literature. If this actually comes up, I don't know. There we go. So this is actually an interesting paper on intrinsic motivation and dynamical control systems. And I'm not going to pretend to be able to fully, I'm going to try to help you appreciate it. I'm not going to fully get into a debate on whether this is a valid paper or not. But it's a nice attempt at this. Ilya Nemenin is, sort of a biophysicist type person. Daniel Polanyi does a lot of stuff with biological systems and complexity theory and information and things like that. So the authors are, that's the perspective they're kind of coming from on this. So the abstract reads, biological systems often choose actions without an explicit reward signal, a phenomenon known as intrinsic motivation. So this is like, we talk about innates and innateness. And one of the aspects of innateness is having this sort of action without an explicit reward signal. So if we think about, reinforcement learning, we often think about this closed loop. And I'm going to do this on the board here. We often think of a closed loop. So we think of stimulus and response. And of course, there's this history in psychology of having a stimulus and response loop where you give the organism a stimulus, there's a response elicited, and it goes back to the stimulus. And there's some adaptation probably, but this is the typical reinforcement learning approach. So this is, the idea being is that maybe there's like a constant background here of the internal model. Like, so you have the response being generated from the internal model. But imagine if you had a stimulus here and then a system here, which both sort of, it's responding to the stimulus. So it's producing an R, but it's also producing something like maybe like a behavior that's inserting into the loop. So the response is actually then both a response to the stimulus and an intrinsic behavior, or a combination of the two, and that's the response. So, it allows you to break down this black box a little bit. Plus, it also implies that you can actually have this behavior independent of the stimulus. So say you have a stimulus and you have this black box here, you have the behavior, and then you have a loop back to the stimulus, actually a loop to the stimulus, because at this point there's no response. It's just kind of independent. So there's stimulus, there's a behavior, the stimulus is not eliciting a response, it's just a behavior that's being elicited. And so you have those two different possibilities. You have this one here and this one here. And this is basically the idea of this tight feedback loop that you find in reinforcement learning. So I just wanted to go over that to sort of frame this idea of of intrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation is something you find in a lot of organisms where there's this like intrinsic need for food, for example. You don't need to give a stimulus to the organism to find food. The organism is trying to find food in the environment, and that's just an imperative of the energetics of the organism. So the organism is always trying to find energy to put into its system. And, there may be like signals for food, like say chemotaxis, which are these signals that, are chemical gradients that the organism might follow. But in the absence of that, the organism will still search for food. So the computational principles underlying this behavior remain poorly understood. So we don't know the computational principles, and we know is like, say, for example, in C. elegans, some of the circuits for movement. We know some of the circuits for chemotactic sensing. We know some of how that's integrated, but we don't know necessarily the circuits or the computational principles for this sort of intrinsic motivation. In this study, we investigated an information theoretic approach to the intrinsic motivation based on maximizing an agent's empowerment, the mutual information between its past actions and its future states. So what that means is you have this loop here, and if you look at this example here, you basically have these two arrows. So let's draw this out a little bit more. So you have the stimulus you have the stimulus going to this black box, you have the response. Now the response is driven by two things. It could either be the stimulus that's causing it, or the behavior, intrinsic behavior that's causing it. So you have these two things that are intersecting. Now there's this idea of mutual information, which is where you're taking the information in the stimulus and the information in the intrinsic behavior, and you're finding this intersection, this mutual information. And so there's an equation, I think we're talking about this in cognition features. We're talking about information entropy, or information measures that have a value H. And so it's basically the intersection of HA and HB. Okay, so that's the intersection of these two sets. There's a set of information in the stimulus, set of information in the behavior. What they're saying is that there's this mutual information between them that then is actionable. And so this is a way, this is a quantitative way to get at this information. But, and this is just the mathematical construct. It's not like telling you exactly what information is coming from what source, but it's the information that's shared in common. It's basically the information that points in the same direction. We show that this approach generalizes previous attempts to formalize intrinsic motivation. We provide a computationally efficient algorithm for computing the necessary quantities. We test our approach on several benchmark control problems. We explain its success in guiding intrinsically motivated behaviors by relating our information theoretic control function to fundamental properties of the dynamical system representing the combined agent environment system. So this is where we take this agent environment system, we try to represent it, try to find this mutual information, and we want to understand like what's guiding intrinsically motivated behaviors, because we know that there's this this imperative for energy that the organism has, but then there are also ways that the environment can be exploited to facilitate that search. So chemotaxis are a good example of that, where you have these chemical gradients in the environment. You have this ability to sense that, to get the information coming in, but you also have this imperative to move towards the greatest reward. So you actually have the organism acting on that gradient and exploiting it in a certain way. So I had a comment in the chat, maybe 2 comments. Okay, so Amanda says, in the discussion section, illuminating what empowerment means for the authors, we used an information theoretic formulation in which the controller starts with knowledge of the stochastic dynamical equations describing the agent and environment, and then selects actions that empower the agent. That is, the controller improves its ability to affect the system in the future, as measured by the mutual information between the action sequence and the subsequent responses. Yeah, so they're going to get into this idea of taking sort of that feedback loop and extracting the mutual information from the interactions between the organism and the environment, or the organism moving through the environment. Okay, so yeah, Jesse had a comment as well, which we'll revisit. But let's go back to the papers. Yeah, so this is where they get into this. This is what Amanda was talking about this idea of empowerment maximization here. So this is where the agent should maximize the mutual information, as we talked about, between their potential actions and the subsequent future state of the world. So, you have this this mutual information, and so if you think about like the world, for example, if I had a individual reference frames, the organism's reference frame, okay? This is the world around it. A little asymmetrical, but okay. It's going to search the world for different things. There are different possibilities, or different patches of food or whatever, okay? And there are a lot of possible things you can do. You can go and, draw paths out to these different locations. You can blindly search this space. You can do a lot of things. And so, what empowerment maximization means is that you can model these states, or at least think about these states in terms of their information content. You can look at the potential actions, so if you're going to take, maybe an exploratory approach, or you're just going to take a path to a certain location and search that area. What is the sort of information that's telling you that this is the best place to go? What is the outcome? You can model those things where they have different sort of payoffs. And so we can sort of think about the future state of the world that way. Think about maximizing the potential actions versus this modeling. And then this corresponds to maximizing the diversity of future world states achievable as a result of the chosen actions. So, you also want to have a diversity of different world states that are achievable. You don't want to just go to one or two states. You want to have a variety of things you can act on. And so this potentiates a broader set of behavioral options in the future. So there's a lot of literature on maximizing payoffs for exploration. There are a lot of foraging, there's this idea in foraging called the levee flight, which is where you have if you were going to explore your environment, you start off at a base and you might go to say a place, a patch of information. You might take a long flight to this patch of information and explore it locally. And then you might go to another patch, take a long flight out there, explore that locally, and then, do this over and over. And this allows you to maximize this, exploring your environment while also giving you this diversity. And it's kind of an even balance between them. And so this is in the literature. There's a debate about this, whether this is the way that organisms do this, whether it's necessary and so forth. But it's just an example of how this might work. And this is just, all kind of hypothetical in the sense that we don't, we can maybe measure it in nature, but this is kind of the model that we think that is going on. Interestingly, potentiating future actions is also a key part of the success of modern reward-based training algorithms. So this is something that you find in reinforcement learning and other areas. I just clicked on a reference, so I think reference 8 is dynamics-aware unsupervised discovery of skills. That's a reference. I should probably 23 and 24. 23 and 24 are diversity is all you need, learning skills without a reward function. And 24 is assistance via empowerment. So these are from NeuroSim and ICLR and other places like that. So this is a thing that people are doing in machine learning and agent learning. Now, despite the success of empowerment maximization, it remains unclear how well it can be used as a general intrinsic motivation principle. So there are many different versions of this related to empowerment, and their relation to each other is unknown. So there's been work on this, but it's been kind of these ad hoc approximations and very few analytical results. So you need to have good characterizations of the system in question, and you need to be able to calculate the mutual information between these two processes in a way that's realistic and rigorous. So this, I showed you in this figure here, where I showed you these nested sets. Those sets are information about the environment, information from the intrinsic behavior, and the overlap. Now, what does that overlap mean? I don't know. I mean, it's just a diagram, but you would have to kind of come up with an information set for each of these, and then there'd have to be some overlap in terms of the information or mutual information, and that's going to be very challenging to put that forward and say this is the thing that we're doing. So so let me go back to the paper. So yeah, this just kind of goes through the analytical aspects of this. It's a lot of math, as I said. I'm not going to evaluate it These things like an inverted pendulum, which is a very simple task where they measure the angle and, they're able to give a stochastically driven control signal, and they can kind of give an approximation of what empowerment is in that system. So empowerment is then given by the maximally achievable mutual information between AT and this at a given power level for AT, the channel capacity between the two. So you have these two things. This is the intrinsic behavior, the intrinsic motivation, and the environment. I guess this is the intrinsic motivation. This final state is the environmental variable here from observed data. And then this, you can look at the channel capacity between the two and you get your mutual information. So that's how they measure it. It's a very simple system like this. This is the inverted pendulum. So it's a very, very simple system. And this is a very nice paper. They cite Ogier and Kaplan, What is Intrinsic Motivation? A Typology of Computational Approaches. So there is this tradition in the neurorobotics literature about intrinsic motivation and its role in, agent behavior. And so definitely they're citing reinforcement learning in the reinforcement learning literature. And then there are things like variational intrinsic control. So there's this, thinking about this computationally. So that's an interesting paper. I don't know if anyone else had any comments about that. But it's definitely something that falls into that sort of developmental AI category. Some of the things we've been talking about with respect to developmental models and what's innate or intrinsic and what's learned from the environment and that interaction between them. The other paper I want to talk about then is this paper from Minds and Machines. And his paper is Enactivism Meets Mechanism, Tensions and Congruities in Cognitive Science. So this is a paper on talking about some things we talk about in the Cognition Futures group. This kind of focuses on enactivism. So the abstract reads, Enactivism advances an understanding of cognition rooted in the dynamic interaction between an embodied agent and their environment. Will's new mechanism suggests that cognition is explained by uncovering the organized components underlying cognitive capacities. So this basically means that you have to sort of think about this interaction between the embodied agent and the environments of the body in the environment, but also think about this internal set of mechanisms. On the face of it, the mechanistic model's emphasis on localizable and decomposable mechanisms, often neural in nature, runs contrary to the enactivist ethos. So what they're saying is that there are these components within the black box that we talked about in the first paper that have this sort of, you can have basically a sort of a reductionist approach to these sort of mechanisms. So you can take it from the black box, you can reduce it down to like specific components, and those components are, localized, to a certain function. So you say, is there a module or a component for like an oscillator, or is there a component for some sort of signal that gets sent in response to something in the environment? You can be very reductionist about this, and this is kind of, this runs contrary to the enactivist ethos, because enactivism is basically the interaction, and that's where everything comes from. So that's what they're trying to get at here. So despite appearances, this paper argues that mechanistic explanations of cognition, being neither narrow nor reductive, incompatible with plausible iterations of ideas like emergence and downward causation, are congruent with enactivism. So these mechanistic explanations actually are not, in conflict with enactivism, but they do fit into that framework. Attention to enactivist ideas, moreover, may serve as a heuristic for mechanistic investigations of cognition. So this is something that you might be able to use in your mechanistic investigation. And so there have been these I think we had it several weeks ago. We had a Twitter debate that we featured on like thinking about the brain as like this thing that we can look at mechanistically and find, you know, regions for different functions versus like networks and things like that. And so that kind of fits into this because, you know, a network approach is sort of a step before you get into the enactivist approach, right? You say enactivism is the interaction between the agent and the environment. And with networks, you're saying, well, you know, you're using these systems that are distributed in the internal part of the agent, that it's, you know, constantly changing, that there's this strong environmental input. And, you know, if you're talking about a mechanistic investigation, you'd be looking for a mechanism that drives a signal outward that maybe interacts with the environment, but is not, you know, but is definitely like, you know, something we can decompose into its sort of fundamental component. So in this paper, he's saying, though, that these two approaches are consistent with one another. So nevertheless, I show how enactivism and approaches that prioritize mechanistic modeling may diverge in starting assumptions about the nature of cognitive phenomena, such as where the constitutive boundaries of cognition lie. So there are some areas where enactivism and mechanism diverge, and those things are actually have to do with how people think about how, you know, sort of the boundaries of cognition. And so we had some comments in the chat here. Amanda, okay. And then interesting, I'm interested in how an explanation can be mechanistic, because I think a good explanation has to explain mechanism, but not problematically reductionistic. What is the relationship between mechanism and interlevel constraint causation? So that's a good question. Now, I don't know if they answer that in this paper. Let's see if there are any good figures or pieces in here that are maybe answer this. Yeah, textual evidence for perceived tension between enactivism and mechanistic or mechanical theories is found in at least 5 overlapping guises. The first is general contrast between enactivism and mechanistic approaches. The second are stated differences between organisms and machines or mechanical systems. The third is purported independence in mechanistic and dynamical explanations, the latter of which is appropriated by enactivists. 4 is the apparent strain between mechanism and holistic, non-reductive features of causal dynamics stressed by enactivists, such as emergence and top-down causation, which has to do with the network approach, because you're arguing that things emerge from a network, and you know that there's this top-down causation of environment on these networks. And 5, proposed incompatibility between some version of mechanism and the Merleau-Ponty-inspired phenomenology, frequently assimilated by enactivism. So they do get into a lot of these issues, and I know Amanda, we've been talking about this in Cognition Futures. So this might be a paper to visit more directly in Cognition Futures, but I did want to bring it up in the main meeting because I think it does fit into some of the agent stuff that we've been doing. There are different ways, and the Maturanian enactivism and Vrushali Nandakar, those get mentioned in here. So, and the autopoietic enactivism. So it's like there are these different forms of enactivism that are, you know, so we think about enactivism and it's like, well, what's, you know, what is the relationship with mechanism? And it turns out there are different types of enactivism that we might want to think about. So yeah, I think that's all I'm going to talk about for this paper, but I just want to know if people had any other comments on those 2 papers.
I really want to read this then for the second one. I've been tending to some other stuff that's happened, so I only caught a bit of it, but it sounded quite relevant, as you said. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Morgan. Very interesting. Do you have any other things to say about it, Amanda?
I don't think so, but that's definitely something I want to keep thinking about. Because one of the things that's come up in cognition features is like what would make an explanation properly enactive or embodied or whatever. And one answer to that is, well, it's not like problematically reductionist, but every time I read it, like I do think that a good explanation for something, one level of that is like explaining the mechanism, at least as I'm in the way that I understand mechanism. Like what is the billiard ball style causation that's happening that allows this phenomenon to occur? And I don't think that has to be reductionistic. So I'm interested in seeing what this paper has to say about that more.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the takeaway is really kind of breaking enactivism down in that way, like because sometimes it can seem like it's very mysterious as to what we mean by enactivism. They just say, well, it's inactive. It's and then it's like, well, what does that mean? How does that help us understand like some of these systems where you have this mix of things, like just saying something is interacting is not very satisfying. Yeah, okay, they interact, but like beyond that, how do we understand the interactions? We go to a certain behavior, how do we understand what contributions are made?
So something like downward causation, maybe that's essential to a good enactivist view of something. But then that raises the question of like what is the mechanism of that interlevel causation? I think that's like a coherent question.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. You're gonna say something? Think Jesse or?
Oh, I was just agreeing.
Okay.
The only other thought on my mind about it is I never finished the podcast with Inez Ippolito that I mentioned before, but I'd be curious. I feel like she's about to get to like describing her own views about like radical enactivism, and I'm curious how she fits into all of the stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, that's good. So I'll share those papers, and especially the latter one, we'll revisit this in Cognition Futures.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for attending. Have a good week.
Two quick things, if I can. One, I have a hub. I made a very simple space in Notion. I just tagged Amanda in it for like I made a place for that conference, and then if you want to talk about the abstract there, you can. I'm gonna try to put some things there.
Okay.
I'll share the link here just for you. I see that you see it. But,
yeah, in the Notion.
Secondly, very quickly, I'll say this. Oh, well, actually, I'll ask you guys for your feedback about this, because I submitted something. It's mostly frontier maps related. And I don't know if you guys want to be in on it or not. But basically, Jenny and her people from like her grad program put on something called hyper digital design. Sure. And it's this. It's a conference, and I submitted something to it. It's very like design oriented, but it's about sort of like I don't know. Host talks that explore fundamental theoretical questions of philosophy, theology, ethics, and art, as well as applied practical discussions concerning how technologies or designs from video games to generative artificial intelligence can be envisioned to mediate and emancipate human creativity. So it's a little bit on that side of things, but I made a submission for frontier map oriented,
and I called my submission Landscapes and Learning Objectives, Frontier Map, and the Challenges of Imbuing Contextual Nuance in Research Practices. And I put this together and submitted it. And I in the meeting, I was checking my emails for other stuff and saw that I got accepted.
Nice.
So I'm very okay with just sort of doing it myself. I mention you all as basically co-authors in the sense that it's a lot of what we talk about in conditioned futures, but applied to frontier map stuff. So I don't know, like, nobody has to do anything for this, but I'm just kind of saying it's there. Like the event itself is the 14th, and it's virtual. So I'll mention again later. We have so many other things that are more pressing, but I think I'm just gonna say, like, I'll remind everybody in a week or so after all these other immediate things. Hey, we're into this. At the very least, I'm basically just gonna, I don't know if this has a time here. I have 20 to 30 minutes, so I can easily, at the very least, I just expect to basically wrap for 20 minutes or so on what I'm doing in frontier maps and basically the preprint about that, and how it ties into teaching and pedagogy and some of the education stuff in the lab. If anybody wants to go in on that, whether anybody at all in the lab wants to go in on that with me, let me know. But I'll do like a lab-based call for proposal about that later. But we did get accepted by that, and really fun, cool thing to do. So, yeah.
Right.
Any immediate questions about that? I know we're kind of out of time, but yeah. Okay. That's my quick little update at the end here.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right,
Next
everybody.
week. All right. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.